Hi, welcome to the Sage's Cabin podcast. I'm your host, Rox Madeira. So grab a cup of tea and come and join me in the Sage's Cabin as we chat about everything from herbal gardening, herbal medicine, movement practices, wild food, postnatal and just general well-being. Hi, so in today's podcast I'm talking to Adhamh, who is a Gaelic consultant, and we're going to talk about what he's offering us at the Wild Food Festival and a bit of the history and the plant lore from Scots Gaelic. So I hope you enjoy. Hello, welcome Adhamh.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for coming on to tell us about your workshop at the Wild Food Festival.
Worries.
So I thought we'd start with, if you just tell me a little bit about you and what you do.
My name's Adhamh Bryn. I'm a Scottish Gaelic consultant. So I do all kinds of work from film and TV to language tuition, to community projects, language revitalisation, general decolonisation work culturally. The list is really endless, to be honest. So just there, I was working with my colleague Vanessa Shakur, who is a herbalist for the United States. We're going to be running a course called Animism and Ecology in Gaelic Lore. So Sunday, I'll then be moving on to a film shoot, an independent film shoot, taking care of the Gaelic language element within that. So there's just a couple of examples of, what's happening this frenetic week of mine.
Busy. So how did
Absolutely.
How did you get involved with wild food in the festival?
Well, it's through Lauren Lochray, a herbalist. So myself and Lauren have been pals for a couple of years and been working back and forth in bits and pieces. And I've been familiarising her with Gaelic lore and how it connects to plant lore. And Lauren's so incredibly knowledgeable with plants. So she's been helping me to get more au fait with what's under our feet, So that's the short version.
Okay. So can you tell us a bit about what you're going to be offering at the festival?
Well, there's two separate things on the Saturday. I'm working with Lauren to do a plant walk. So Lauren will be taking care of most of the plant elements on that because she's the one with the knowledge on that front. And I'm just going to plug in little bits about Gaelic lore to do with the harvesting of plants, the correct harvest and how you would approach plants, how you would go about harvesting plants, and also talk about bits of lore that from oral tradition that fit into the use of plants, that describe the use of plants, their medicinal uses, and just generally how plants are regarded through the Gaelic lens, or were, not so much anymore. That knowledge is unfortunately fast, disappearing. But so I suppose there is a revivalist element to this as well, So that's the first part, and then later on in the afternoon, I'm going to do a traditional what we call a taigh-ceilidh, which is literally means, I suppose it literally means a visiting house. So the taigh-ceilidh comes from the fact that there would normally be a house in every township in the Highlands that would be famed for its storytelling, in the sense that would be the house to which people came for storytelling, for singing, for sharing news. These things happened in most houses in the Highlands, but there would most often be one or two within any given township. Particularly, it would be a particular draw because the denizens would be very well versed in the traditions of the people. So the taigh-ceilidh was the idea that people would come in most often on a winter's night when people had the time, when the harvest was in, and there was less to do because the days were short. They would come in and they would share story, song, lore, discuss proverbs, hear about news from overseas and from elsewhere in Scotland or Ireland. And it was a chance for people to sort of affirm a common identity. So whereas today, a lot of people are looking for the next new thing, looking for the next, new big story, or looking for the latest goss. Not that Highland people didn't gossip. I can tell you they most certainly did with aplomb. But the actual thing about the storytelling was quite often that people were looking to hear the story that they knew. And when people told these stories, because everyone had a cultural reference point, it allowed folk to reinforce their common sense of who they were and how they fitted together as a community. And the idea as a storyteller would be to recite the story almost as neutrally as possible. So rather than big arm gestures and, making the thing into a sort of drama, the storytelling technique would be very recitative. So the idea would be that people would essentially just turn themselves into a vessel for the lore. And the best vessel was one that could let the lore speak for itself. So much less individualism and much more of a communal way of looking at things. It's just to bring a little bit of that to the Wild Food Festival.
That's really interesting. It's interesting to hear about the history of all that. Do you think you could be able to give us like a kind of a sneak peek into what you're going to talk about around the plant lore and things?
Well, the plant lore thing is interesting because in terms of a really kind of a robust living tradition on that, you might find some people in the Western Isles who still have an idea of how to approach plants in the manner that their grandparents or their grandparents did. But even there, the tradition is just about worn away. And so what we have to do is we have to reach back into things like Carmina Gadelica, which is a collection of incantations and charms and prayers from the late 19th century, collected by Alexander Carmichael in the Scottish Highlands and Islands, and try to transpose how these would have been used into a kind of practical application again. So, for instance, in the past, they would take, St. John's wort. If you're looking for that, you won't find it. That's what the Highlanders believed, for instance. So you have to go looking for Lus Chalam Hila, as they called it, Gunshira Guniari, and that means without seeking, without desiring. So, when you're out and about, I'm saying looking for it, you're actually not looking for it. You'll only get the full powerful medicinal use of that plant, which is so good for dealing with depression and all that side of things. You're only going to get, that's so they believed. And I'm running with this, you're only going to get the full medicinal value if you find St. John's wort without looking for it. So that's just a little example. So will we find any St. John's wort? We'll have to see, but we need to make sure to go into it with no intention to find it. And then there are other things like very, very common plants like yarrow. You would have a verse for that. So you would start with, Bunyami in Yarra, so I shall pluck the fine yarrow, and then there would be a whole rigmarole on it. And you need to say this before you approach the plant. It's supposed to, in order to introduce yourself to the plant and treat the plant with respect. And then, you give it a little tug and figure out whether it really wants to be plucked or not, So it's just this kind of an idea, and Lauren's much better versed in the actual plant practice than I am, but I can inject these little bits of Gaelic lore, which I think just create an interesting concept, context in the modern, world.
I think so, because we're always looking to things like Native America and stuff and shamanic things, and we've totally lost that connection to what we've got here in this island. So it's interesting for people to kind of bring it in and say, no, actually, we did do this and we did do that.
Very much so, and not just within the Gaelic tradition, within the Scots-speaking tradition, it's all there as well. Maybe not quite as strongly as it was in the Highlands, but it's definitely there. Everyone knows about nettles and dock leaves growing next to one another. That's the real common one that most people recognise. And they know that happens. Oh, there must be something about that. It's pretty intuitively, but obviously, they're connected because you can treat a nettle sting with a dock leaf. But there's loads of relationships like that in nature, which, are mostly unknown, that it's quite interesting to delve into. But I'll let Lauren, take the lead on that one. But just bringing that Gaelic perspective in, I think, is interesting, as you say, because it returns our focus back to the ground under our feet, as Alistair McIntosh says. Dig where you stand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting when you're talking about them, like kind of almost speaking to the plants, because I hear people, herbalists, not a lot, but some people talking about how you approach the plants and how you should ask before you take things. So it's interesting that people have done that in the past.
Oh, absolutely. And it's also, I think, that a thing that really concerns me at the moment is the really sort of intense neo-colonialism that's coming out of the United States, and it's coming in through Netflix and through phones and through tablets and through, and it's not that I don't, watch some crap TV or listen to rock and roll. I'm the same as anyone else, but I'm quite careful to compartmentalize it. My culture is here, and yes, I indulge in popular culture just like most other people do, but I compartmentalize. I think it's really important to do that. Because, as people get more drawn into the digital world, and therefore they're more at the mercy of the content that is shared, by the people who hold the power, then our culture gets more and more shriveled up with the lack of use. Mm-hmm. So it's about trying to reinvest back into these things, because when you reinvest, you invest into the ground in which you stand, the culture that grew up from it. Then it's just like a cultural ecosystem that goes with the natural ecosystem. And a lot of the rewilding movements these days, don't seem to factor in people, which is a crazy thing, because people we're clearly here on this planet is to be its stewards, and we're not doing the best job, but there's hope, yeah, and reinvesting in what's right here in front of us in the places that we currently inhabit is where to begin, I think, and it has to happen as well as, from an environmental perspective. It's got to happen from a cultural perspective. So I like to call it cultural rewilding.
So apart from obviously at the festival, where can other people connect with you and kind of learn more about cultural rewilding?
Well, I'm available on all the usual irritating channels on social media. So I am at Gaelic Consultant, but it's all one word and it's only got one C in the middle. So that's where to find me. So at GaelicConsultant. So Facebook, Insta, Twitter, you can track me down there, and I'll be only too happy to be distracted.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to chat.
You're welcome. Thanks for your time.
So if you're around Scotland and Loch Lomond in September, the 18th and 19th, please come along to the Wild Food Festival. The tickets are on sale now, and the bookings for workshops are open, so you can book into all the workshops that you want to go to. There are a mixture of free workshops with your festival ticket, and also additional paid workshops with the money going straight to the facilitators. There's also going to be stalls and various wild foods to try and cocktails to drink. So I hope to see you at the festival. So this website is www.scottishwildfoodfestival.co.uk. And if you want to hear more from me and listen to the podcast, please like, share and subscribe, and follow at www.roxmadeira.com.